Most people are doing fasting completely wrong. Not because they lack discipline, not because they chose the wrong eating window, but because they've been asking the wrong question entirely. Everyone obsesses over calories. How many did I consume? Did that tiny sip of cream ruin everything? Will this one food destroy 8 hours of fasting? But calories are not the gatekeeper of your fast. There is one hormone that controls everything, whether your body burns fat or locks it away, whether you stay in a fat-burning state or get pulled right out of it. And once you understand how that hormone works, fasting stops feeling like a punishment and starts feeling like something you actually have control over. That hormone is insulin, and by the end of this, you'll never think about fasting the same way again. Here's what's actually happening inside your body when you stop eating. Your body doesn't panic. It doesn't scramble for survival the moment your last meal is digested. Instead, it activates a system that has been refined over tens of thousands of years of human evolution, a metabolic shift so elegant and precise that most people never fully appreciate what their body is quietly doing for them. Under normal circumstances, when you eat carbohydrates, they break down into glucose. That glucose floods your bloodstream, insulin rises to manage it, and your body burns sugar for fuel. It's fast, convenient, and works perfectly when food is always available. But the moment food stops coming in, your body begins a different conversation. The brain still needs energy. The heart still needs to beat. Every cell in your body still needs to function. So your body turns to its most abundant stored energy source, fat. The liver steps in as the central processing unit of this shift. It takes fatty acids released from your fat tissue and converts them into molecules called ketones. And here's what most people don't realize. Ketones are not some desperate emergency fuel your body reluctantly produces when starving. They are a remarkably clean, stable, and efficient energy source. During fasting, ketones can supply up to 60 to 70% of your brain's energy needs. Some research even suggests that the brain functions with greater clarity and steadiness on ketones compared to the constant fluctuations of blood glucose. This shift from burning sugar to burning fat is exactly what you're trying to activate when you fast. And the single factor that determines whether that shift happens or not is insulin. Insulin is not your enemy. It is an essential hormone that manages blood sugar and shuttles glucose into your cells after meals. But in the context of fasting, insulin acts like a lock on your fat cells. When insulin is elevated, stored fat cannot be released. Your body is forced to keep burning glucose, even if you're carrying tens of thousands of calories in stored fat just sitting there unused. The moment insulin drops to low levels, that lock opens. Fatty acids pour out of fat tissue, travel to the liver, and get converted into ketones. Your body has officially entered fat-burning mode.
So, what raises insulin? Sugar does, obviously. Refined carbohydrates, sweet fruit, bread, rice, these spike glucose and trigger a significant insulin response. Protein also raises insulin, though typically not as dramatically as carbohydrates. This surprises a lot of people. They assume only sugar is the problem, but protein still triggers a real insulin response, especially in larger amounts. And fat? Fat has minimal impact on insulin levels. This is the critical insight that changes everything. The real question to ask about anything you consume during a fast is not how many calories does this contain. The real question is, does this raise insulin enough to shut down fat burning? Because if it doesn't meaningfully elevate insulin, your body can remain in a fat-burning state, even if a small number of calories are technically present. That's not a loophole. That's biology. And biology operates on hormonal signals, not internet rules. Now let's talk about what this actually means in practice, starting with something that has become almost synonymous with performance fasting, MCT oil. If insulin is the lock controlling access to your fat stores, MCT oil functions like a direct shortcut into your liver's ketone production system.
What makes it so different from other fats is the way it's absorbed. Most dietary fats, the kind in butter, olive oil, or meat, go through a long digestive journey. They're emulsified by bile, broken down in the small intestine, absorbed into the lymphatic system, and eventually transported to the liver. The entire process can take hours. MCT, short for medium-chain triglycerides, is structurally shorter, and that structural difference changes everything. Instead of taking the long route, MCT is absorbed directly through the intestinal wall and travels straight to the liver via the portal vein. No extended delay, no complex transport system. Once it arrives at the liver, it is rapidly converted into ketones.
Among the different types of MCTs, C8, also called caprylic acid, is considered the most ketogenic. It converts into ketones more quickly and efficiently than C10 or C12. Some research suggests that 10 to 20 grams of C8 can significantly raise blood ketone levels within 1 to 2 hours. What makes MCT particularly interesting isn't just that it avoids raising insulin, it actively encourages the liver to produce ketones even when metabolic conditions aren't perfectly optimized. It doesn't just preserve your fast. In the right amounts, it can deepen it. That said, MCT is not a free pass. If you're consuming significant carbohydrates alongside it, insulin will still rise and fat burning will still be suppressed. MCT can support the transition into fat burning, but it cannot override persistently elevated insulin. Start with 1 teaspoon and build up gradually. Your digestive system needs time to adapt, and consuming too much too quickly can cause cramping or loose stools. Not dangerous, but deeply unpleasant. Used intelligently and in appropriate amounts, MCT oil is a tool grounded in physiology, not a trick from a trending YouTube video.
Black coffee and unsweetened tea operate differently, but they're equally fascinating. At their most basic level, they contain virtually no calories, no sugar, no meaningful carbohydrates, and no significant protein, so they don't trigger a substantial insulin response. But the benefits go far beyond simply not breaking your fast. Coffee contains over 100 biologically active compounds. Among the most studied are polyphenols, particularly chlorogenic acid, which directly influence your mitochondria, the structures inside your cells responsible for burning fat to produce energy. When mitochondrial function is supported, fat oxidation can occur more efficiently. In this sense, coffee isn't merely neutral during fasting. It may actively support the very metabolic processes fasting is designed to enhance.
Caffeine adds small pauses. It stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, slightly increases adrenaline, and signals fat cells to release free fatty acids into the bloodstream, making more fuel available for burning. Some research suggests caffeine can modestly increase metabolic rate in the short term. Not dramatically, but when your body is already primed to burn fat, even a gentle push matters. Green tea offers similar benefits with a softer touch. Its key compound EGCG has been widely studied for supporting fat metabolism, and when paired with green tea's modest caffeine content, it may enhance fat oxidation without the stronger stimulation associated with coffee. Green tea also contains L-theanine, an amino acid that promotes calm focus and softens caffeine's edges, helping you feel alert without feeling wired. The non-negotiable rule for both drinks, however, is this: pure form only. No sugar, no syrups, no sweetened creamers. Even a single spoonful of sugar can elevate blood glucose, raise insulin, and close the fat-burning lock, regardless of how many hours you've already fasted. That innocent-looking splash of flavored creamer has ended more fasts than most people will ever realize.
Soluble fiber plays an entirely different role in the fasting equation. It doesn't directly target insulin or ketones. What it targets is hunger itself, which is often the actual reason people abandon their fast long before they plan to. Soluble fiber, such as psyllium husk or basil seeds, introduces a fascinating mechanism. Your body doesn't produce the enzymes needed to digest it. So even though the nutrition label may list calories, you don't absorb that energy in the traditional sense. It passes largely intact through the small intestine. But here's where it gets interesting. Your gut is home to trillions of bacteria, your microbiome. And those microorganisms can ferment and metabolize soluble fiber. When they do, they produce short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, acetate, and propionate. These molecules nourish intestinal cells and also trigger the release of hormones like GLP-1 and peptide YY. These hormones travel to the brain and signal that energy needs are being met, reducing hunger without you consuming a single absorbable calorie.
This is the gut-brain axis at work. When you consume a small amount of soluble fiber during a fasting window, you are not eating in any conventional sense. You are feeding your microbiome in exchange for satiety signals. Your brain receives the message that things are stable, and hunger intensity tends to drop. This explains why many people report noticeable appetite suppression after mixing just a teaspoon of psyllium husk in water. And unlike digestible carbohydrates, soluble fiber does not significantly raise blood glucose or stimulate insulin the way sugar or starch does. If your goal is maintaining low insulin and continuing to burn fat, a modest amount of psyllium or soaked basil seeds generally won't lock your fat stores. It makes fasting more sustainable by reducing the physiological stress that drives most people to quit. Just consume it with adequate water and start with small amounts. Individual microbiomes vary, and too much too soon can cause bloating.
Heavy cream occupies one of the most debated gray zones in fasting. Some insist even a drop of dairy ends a fast. Others claim fat is always safe. The truth, as it almost always is in biology, sits somewhere between those two extremes. Heavy cream is composed almost entirely of fat, with minimal carbohydrate and protein, especially when unsweetened. Because of that composition, small amounts typically don't trigger a significant insulin response. That's why 1 tablespoon of heavy cream, around 40 to 50 calories, generally doesn't push someone out of ketosis. But there's an important distinction worth making. Ketosis, the production and utilization of ketones, is one thing. Deeper fasting physiology, which includes processes like increased AMPK activity and reduced mTOR signaling, may be more sensitive to overall energy intake. Adding a small amount of heavy cream may allow you to maintain ketosis while still introducing some external energy that the body may prioritize burning before it reaches your stored fat. Not harmful, but not identical to zero intake either.
The real issue is quantity. 1 tablespoon is a mild metabolic addition. 3 or 4 tablespoons means you're no longer having coffee, you're having a liquid breakfast. Even if that fat doesn't spike insulin dramatically, it provides enough incoming fuel that your body may pause its use of stored fat while it processes what just arrived. And not all creamers are equal. Many commercial varieties contain hidden sugars, corn syrup, or added milk proteins that can raise insulin more than expected. If you're going to use heavy cream, make it pure, unsweetened, and read the label carefully. A teaspoon to support a longer fasting window is a reasonable compromise. A creamy coffee drink is a different metabolic conversation entirely. Now, for the section that catches most people completely off guard, the things that appear safe but quietly work against you. Fasting awareness tends to be focused on the obvious: no bread, no sugar, no meals. But there are items that are marketed as zero-calorie, sugar-free, or fasting-friendly that may still subtly influence insulin or metabolic signaling in ways most people never consider. Chewing gum, including sugar-free varieties, is a prime example. It provides negligible calories, but the act of chewing and the perception of sweetness activates what's known as the cephalic phase response, a preparatory digestive reaction triggered purely by taste and chewing mechanics.
Add small pauses. And in some individuals, provoke a small insulin response. For those aiming at deeper fasting states and highly stable insulin, that stimulation is counterproductive. Some artificial sweeteners in gum may also increase cravings, making hunger harder to manage. Zero-calorie flavored beverages carry a similar risk. A label that reads 0 calories does not mean zero biological impact. Some artificial sweeteners and flavoring compounds may disturb the gut microbiome or provoke mild insulin responses in certain individuals. Not everyone reacts the same way, which is precisely the problem. The unpredictability makes them unreliable during a fast. Plain water, black coffee, and unsweetened tea remain the most transparent and trustworthy options because their biological effects are well understood and consistent.
Amino acid supplements deserve particular scrutiny. Many are marketed as muscle-preserving tools that supposedly won't break a fast. But if they contain BCAAs, EAAs, or free-form amino acids in any form, they are still biologically active protein components. Protein, regardless of its form, stimulates insulin and activates mTOR, a cellular growth signal. For anyone fasting specifically to enhance autophagy or reduce growth signaling, amino acid supplements directly oppose that goal. They are not metabolically neutral, no matter what the packaging claims. And when reading labels on any supplement, look carefully for terms like dextrose or maltodextrin. These are simply forms of sugar that often appear as fillers or carriers in vitamins, electrolyte powders, and other products. Small amounts in isolation may not dramatically alter metabolism, but cumulative exposure from multiple sources across a fasting window can raise insulin just enough to interrupt fat burning. Protein isolates carry a similar concern. A single scoop of whey isolate may contain 20 to 25 grams of protein, more than enough to create a measurable insulin response. That's perfectly appropriate at a meal. During a fasting window, it ends the fast.
Here's what all of this comes down to. Fasting is not a calorie game. It is a hormone game. Your body is not a simple calculator that subtracts every calorie consumed and decides whether you're fasting based on the number it lands on. It is a sophisticated biological system that responds to hormonal signals. And the most important of those signals, in the context of fasting, is insulin. MCT oil can push ketone production. Black coffee and unsweetened tea support fat mobilization at the cellular level. Soluble fiber communicates with your gut microbiome to reduce hunger without raising insulin. A small amount of heavy cream may not meaningfully disrupt fat burning. A modest handful of high-fat, low-protein nuts may maintain ketosis under the right conditions. Bone broth can help stabilize electrolytes during extended fasting, though the protein it contains means it's not completely neutral, especially if your goal is maximizing autophagy rather than simply maintaining ketosis.
But a small pauses between key ideas. A hidden spoonful of sugar, a zero-calorie drink that quietly triggers an insulin response, or a scoop of protein marketed as fasting safe can close the fat-burning switch without you ever realizing it. The difference between success and frustration in fasting is almost never about willpower. It is almost always about understanding the mechanisms and then making intentional choices based on what those mechanisms actually are. You don't need an endless list of forbidden items memorized. You only need one guiding question to carry with you into every fasting window. Does this raise insulin enough to stop my body from burning fat? When that question becomes your filter, fasting becomes something entirely different. It stops being a battle against your own hunger and starts being an intelligent, flexible, sustainable practice that works with your biology instead of against it. Your body has never been working against you. It has always been responding to the signals you send it. Now you know what signals actually matter.